So we got another round of $1 trillion of stimulus and infrastructure. I think it was 3.5 trillion. I thought I would give a quick crash course on what some of these big numbers are, right? Because millions and billions and trillions, they kind of all blend together. I thought I'd give some life stories of when I first ran into some of these numbers. When I was a kid, I started collecting coins with the state quarters program, and I learned that Delaware was the first state in the United States. And I wanted to accumulate 1,000 of those quarters. I remember every time my parents would go get quarters for parking, we used to park on the street where I was going to school. I was going to college part-time, actually. And we would get quarters for parking. I would want to go through them to look for Delaware. It drove my mom crazy, because sometimes she would get $2 worth of quarters, and then there would be 2 or 3 Delawares, and I would want to pull them out, and now she didn't have enough to park. It drove my mom crazy. But I wanted 1,000 of them because I had been watching Home Shopping Network one night, and they were selling 1,000 silver quarters or silver dimes or something like that in a bag. And I thought that if I held on to Delaware quarters for 20, 30, 40 years, it would be just like that. Clearly, it hasn't come true, right? It's been more than 20 years since that Delaware quarter. I don't see it being worth much more than a quarter, unless it's in like uncirculated condition. But that was my dream. And I remember thinking every week we would go get quarters for parking, and I'd pull out at least 5 or 10 quarters every week. And I remember calculating how long it would take me to get up to 1,000. I was very disheartened. Now, fast forward a few years from then, I was working on my PhD, and I was unhappy for 2 things when I was working on my PhD. Number one, I was working on a problem in a field called computational social choice theory, but my real passion was in another math problem called Ramsey theory, and I wanted to retire after I graduated with my PhD to work full-time on Ramsey theory. And I estimated how much I needed in order to retire, and my lower bound was 1 million. It would not be a terribly comfortable retirement, but at least I could work on Ramsey theory. Or I could work on Ramsey theory and maybe work less, right? Only work part-time and have some time for Ramsey theory. If I had $1 million parked somewhere, yeah, I could probably do that. And so I was watching, I think it was one of my favorite economists, I can't remember which one. He was saying that silver would one day be worth $1,000 an ounce, which I still believe, right? I'm glad to have more time to accumulate silver before it gets there. And I figured out that, well, I knew that 1,000 times 1,000 was 1 million. So I needed 1,000 ounces of silver. And I remember every time I would go buy silver, I would then think about what percentage of the way I was there. It turned out I didn't get 1,000 until almost a few months before graduation from my PhD program, if I remember correctly. At the beginning, I remember thinking that when I have 1,000 ounces of silver, because I was buying junk silver, I was buying 1, 5, 10 ounce silver bars. Occasionally, I think I only had 2 of them. Occasionally, I would be lucky enough to buy a 100 ounce silver bar, but they were all tiny things. And I remember thinking how messy that was. And when I had 1,000 ounces, I wanted to go trade it for a 1,000 ounce silver bar. Actually, I remember thinking I might not even need to have 1,000 ounces of silver, because the 1,000 ounce silver bar usually had a much lower premium. If I found somebody who could buy the loose silver at a good price, I could probably trade 900 ounces of silver for that 1,000 ounce silver bar. And I remember thinking, and a very exciting time, especially toward the end when I got close to 1,000. And I remember thinking, oh my God, one day I really could work on Ramsey theory. So that was 1 million. Well, my first year working on my PhD, I learned that we had our very first $1 trillion budget deficit. And I wanted to think about just what $1 trillion would look like. So I imagined what it would look like to have a trillion silver dollars, right? Morgan, Peace, or even Eisenhower silver dollars. And I imagined lining them up 1,000 coins in a row by 1,000 coins perpendicular to that, with 1 million coins high, right? And I imagine placing that in the middle of New York City. And I remember calculating it would be many, many times taller than all the buildings in New York City. It would take up 5 blocks in each direction. And I kind of imagine what it would look like, right? Obviously, there's not enough of any metal to make coins like that, right? 1 trillion coins. Probably not even enough copper or nickel. Maybe there is aluminum, but the energy to make the aluminum would be ridiculous, right? Anyway, that's what 1 trillion is. And then I imagined, I had a computer program. So my passion was in Ramsey theory, and I eventually wrote a prototype for how one might solve that problem. It would obviously be a brute force search, and I estimated how long that program would take to run. And I estimated it by running what I thought was about 1 billionth of the program and seeing how long that would take. And 1 billionth of that program took about 1,000 seconds to run. That's about 15 minutes. And so 1,000 times 1 billion is 1 trillion. And I thought, hey, that's not too bad. I could start running this program, and maybe I'll have to pass my computer down to my children, my grandchildren. My grandchildren might see the results of Ramsey theory. I got out the calculator to see how long 1 trillion seconds was, and it was about 30,000 years. There was another thing I wanted to do. I remember I was looking at the gold to silver ratio and how it had fluctuated over the years. And especially my favorite ratio, I knew this when I was working on my PhD, was platinum to palladium. They fluctuate between 4 to 1 and I think 2 to 1. I think now palladium has gone to 4 to 1, right? At the time that was unbelievable. But so even between 4 to 1 versus 1 to 2, that's an 8 times ratio, right? And I remember calculating how long it would take me to make $1 trillion, and it's still a good amount of time, right? Probably more than a human lifetime. And I was disheartened because there were 2 reasons I was unhappy when I was working on my PhD. Number 1 was that I wanted to work on Ramsey theory. And number 2, I felt like I didn't have enough money for social events, right? I would see all my friends go out to a meal or go to a movie. And I remember thinking, if only I had enough money to join them every fucking time, right? I could look for my future wife, right? I remember thinking in those terms, right? I remember thinking how nice it would be to eat out at every meal, right? I thought if I had a few $1 trillion, I could do that more often. I was exaggerating a little bit, right? Probably wouldn't even take a few million before I could start doing that more often, right? But I really wanted to be a trillionaire so fucking bad because of that, right? I thought I could mingle more. I used to spend a lot of time in quarantine, not because of an infectious disease, but for financial reasons, right? Anyway, I kind of have my wish now. Well, I'm not a millionaire, but I put a lot of priority into mingling with others. Anyway, so that's what $1 trillion is. So be careful what you wish for with the stimulus. Thanks for watching.